Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to Work Cookie, our weekly gathering of HRIOs, recruiters, people who love to help those in business, and one actor. Jeremy, we are here again, and hopefully this will be fun. We're going to talk about the best work break ideas.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sure you've got a list.
Well, actually, I do not. I came without a list today. That way we can get everything right from the audience. I have some thoughts, and Brendan has some research to share today. And this falls in line with our October theme. So we're trying to figure out energizing the workplace. That's our theme for October. And we're having, whether it be the social media, whether it be all the events, the side events that we're doing, and of course our weekly podcast here. So energizing the workplace. And we start out on that note. I'm going to, let's just put it out there. If anyone can, just throw in a list in the chat of any work break ideas. And Tom, I'm going to go to you to start us off with why are work breaks needed in your opinion, and what's something that you suggest doing? And I have a feeling you're going to pull from the acting world a little bit. Go for it.
I am. Well, yeah, we need breaks. I mean, we can't work 8 hours straight. Even if when I seclude myself and I'm going to work all day on writing something or creating a program, I'm still going to need breaks. So you want to get yourself re-energized. The question becomes, how do you re-energize your thing? Sometimes I just need my mind to shut off for a few minutes. So I have a few games on my phone, like solitaire. Not very challenging, but it gets me thinking a little bit differently. But I always, whether I was teaching in post-secondary or directing a show, there were times where, the energy was just horrible. The focus wasn't there. I keep watching sporting teams going, they need to do some team building exercises that I know. So if you can get other people to take breaks with you and to play some games, there's a ton of theater games out there that just get your creative side going. They give you energy, and they can really help to sort of put you forward again and get the momentum going.
I like that idea of momentum, refresh. It's almost like rebooting your computer. It's interesting when you look at, they do these PET scans, if I'm correct, when they inject, it's like a radioactive ink per se into your brain, and you can see where the most active parts of your brain are. And when we're sleeping, wouldn't you know that your brain is about just as active as when you're awake? It's those cleaning processes. And I like to think about it as when we do like a disk defragment on our computer, it drains it's going and going, and it's taking so much memory up. But in the end, it leaves a more powerful, more focused ability for us to work. Brendan, do you want to get us going with some of the research? And right before I turn it over to you, we've got at least one really interesting. So in the chat, here's some examples. The first one caught my eye. Best work break ideas people are putting in the chat here. Forest bathing was one of the first ones that were put up. And then we have lunch and learn, company paid lunch, napping, exercise hour, anything getting away from the computer screen, interacting with people in the flesh, especially with all the online remote work that we have. Doing squats, planks, push-ups, getting up active, getting that blood flowing. So I'm going to turn it over to actually you, Tom, for any thoughts, because you're the boss here, and then you can turn it over to Brendan when you're ready.
Well, thanks very much, Jeremy. And yeah, there are lots of great exercises and things you can do to rebuild that energy. It's a lot like when I work with students on breathing. There are two things you can do with breath, deep, relaxing breaths. One is to relax so you can go to sleep. The other is to cleanse so that you release the stress and tension that your body is using to hold you upright, for example. And if you can let go of that stress and tension, you actually get more energy. Brendan, let's go to you.
So I have a great article here entitled "The Impact of Within-Day Work Breaks on Daily Recovery Processes," and it's an event-based pre-post experience sampling study. So within the design of this, they're using it as an event-based pre and post design. So they're doing collecting data pre-event, collecting data post-event to try to measure exactly what they're measuring for. And the reason why I like this study, and I'm gonna lead off with this, is that the results of this model were using a sample of Chinese white collar employees. And why do I feel that is important? Because when you are typically white collar, you're a salaried employee, you're getting paid no matter what, and you're going to be much less inclined to take a break. I've been salaried now for quite some time, and like lunch breaks are not a thing to me. Like I just eat while I work. That's not really a thing. So we have to think about those types of, you're not, when you're an hourly employee, you have to take lunch for the most part. When you're a salaried employee, lunch just gets in the way. Breaks get in the way. So breaks aren't a thing. I need to get more work done. I'd rather save myself time someplace else. So within this design, it showed that within day work breaks are significantly associated with reduced fatigue and negative affect and increased positive affect, supporting their predicted recovery effects of within day work breaks. So that a work break is showing that you're going to be less fatigued and you're going to be more positive. And again, I can't overemphasize the fact that they used white collar employees for this, because I think it's so important that, again, those are not typically people who are going to take breaks.
Let me ask you something, Brendan. Do you think also with the white collar versus blue collar employees that the blue collar employees are usually physically active? They're using their bodies, they're getting, they're getting a flow going. They might at the end of the day burn out because they've been so active. But do you think part of what we're looking at with white collar individuals is that they spend so much time sitting and sedentary that they really actually need to get up and get active?
So very candidly, at the beginning of my career, I worked in a very physically stressful environment, but that's what I wanted. That's what I wanted to do. I didn't want to sit at a desk all day. I wanted to move pallets of things and lift heavy things. That was just what I was into at the time. And I have to tell you, that is less exhausting than sitting at a desk all day doing things, because at least that's energizing. You're up, you're doing things. Sitting at a desk, sitting in front of a computer can actually be a lot more tiring.
Do you think those desks they have now where you can actually raise the desk so you can stand up or get on a treadmill? Hey, there's multitasking for you.
I mean, if that's something that you physically feel will help you, sure. I mean, if I'm getting up and I'm walking around, like that's my thing. At least once an hour, I'll get up, do a quick lap, depending on what client I'm at, depending how large the area of the space is. And it's also conducive to my job, right? Because when I first started out, it was like, oh no, you're supposed to be in your office, you're supposed to be doing things. As part of your job, working in any sort of IO psychology sort of position, you should be interacting with people. That's unless you're more on the I side, and that might be why you chose to go into the I side. But the O side is definitely going to be more people interactions, and it's part of your job to be helpful to go around and talk to those people, because that's how you stay ahead of developments.
Right. Linda Ann, let me go to you, because there is a different approach at different organizations. Some organizations you come at 8:00, we chain you to your desk, and there you will stay until 4:30. There are other companies, especially some of the high tech companies, that when they started up, they brought in the foosball table and the ping pong table. They encouraged their employees to take naps, and so we have two extremes. Is there anything out there that gives us any sort of indication about which is better and increases something like productivity?
Well, the things that I've seen really indicate that when you take breaks, you are more productive. right? Especially when you not just take a break. One of the things I was looking up some topics for our conversation today, and a lot of the titles were 51 ways to take a break and be more productive, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, if you're purposefully taking your break so that you can be more productive, I'm like, there's a little bit of an oxymoron there. So I think that when people take breaks, they are more productive. I think that you have to be careful about how you're looking at those breaks, because you don't want to be constantly changing tasks and things like that, because that will diminish your productivity, right?
Right.
But I think it's important for your brain to stop so that it can process on a different level. One of the things that and it's kind of like why you give something a decision 24 hours, so that you can go ahead and take that shower and and sleep overnight and whatever, and come back and go, oh, my solution is different now, right?
Right.
And so I think that you have to be purposeful in what you're doing. And what my topic was, forest bathing, because I've seen that a lot. And
Would you
that
explain that to me?
it started in Japan, as a lot of things do, and it's about the value of really going out into nature and spending time out there, and being aware of nature, listening to the birds and hearing the leaves rustle, and to feel the grass under your feet, or whatever it is for you. And to my surprise, there are certified forest bathing therapists, but which I was like, wow, because people will go for 2 or 3 days on a getaway for doing that. But they talk about there's value in doing it like 20 minutes a day, or 20 minutes 3 times a week, just to really give your brain a different perspective, and I do that fairly regularly because I'm where I live, and it makes a huge difference to me.
Thank you for explaining that to me. And it is amazing. Someone taught me this years ago, but if your feet are sore, take your shoes and socks off, walk on the grass. Within 2 to 5 minutes, your feet are no longer sore. And I love getting back to nature. Getting back for 2 or 3 days. We used to call that camping. Lee, let's go to you.
It's along that same vein, they actually have wilderness therapy out there, and a lot of times they do that with troubled teens, or like sometimes with veterans, PTSD and stuff. And it's kind of a similar thing. They take you out to do something outside, away from technology and stress and people and all that kind of stuff. It's interesting that so many companies will do a lip service to this kind of thing. There's a company right around the corner from my house. They've got a wonderful walking path. You can see it from the road. It goes around they got a little lake with a fountain and all this kind of stuff. I have never seen anyone walking on it. And these companies, they provide these things, and it's like, oh, it's a wonderful perk. Well, it's only a perk if you give people time to use it, or you encourage people time to use it. One thing, like my time in the military, I mean, obviously when we're operational or deployed or something, we're up and moving, because that's kind of the thing. But a lot of times in a staff type job, it's just like the civilian world. You're in a cubicle somewhere. And the difference is, at least in the Navy, is that you are supposed to take time during your workday to exercise. It's actually mandated. A lot of people still don't. A lot of the really old senior people don't like to let you, because they're still stuck in some old thinking. But that was one thing I always made sure. And if they tried to give me flack, I pulled out the instructions, slapped it on their desk, and said, "Yeah, talk to the admiral about that." But I would also go around and make my people get up and move around, because early in my career, I ended up in the hospital for a migraine that I didn't know was a migraine. I thought I was having a stroke. Scared the bejesus out of me. there's actually a physical thing. It's a whole long story. I'm not even going into it, but it mimics a stroke. And the neurologist was like, you know, get out of your chair. Because I was sitting there and I was working on something, and I'm sitting there and I sat there for hours working on a problem, on something out, you know, some analysis and stuff I was doing. And I didn't move, and I got all tensed up and everything else. And I mean, scared me to death. I'm driving down the road with my infant son in the back, and all of a sudden I think I'm having a stroke, and I'm just praying to get to a parking lot before I die. You know, I mean, you know, the neurologist came and talked to me. I'm like, maybe I should make it a point to get up more often. And he told me that I needed to get up at least once an hour and walk around for, you know, 5 minutes or so. And it made a huge difference. And, you know, one thing that I always used to do in the military too, you know, the military still has a lot of people who smoke. So when the smokers would go for a smoke break, we all take a smoke break. So why should you get extra time? So when you go out to you know, to do your thing, we're all going to get up and go do something else, and we're all going to take our, you know, 5 or 10 minutes, and we're all going to go sit back down. And it does wonders for the morale when you make people get up and get away, because they didn't realize how stressed they were sitting there and just, you know, whatever.
Let me ask you, Lee, because, you know, some people don't take breaks. There are some people who don't take a lunch break. You know, they're so busy working. Did you ever have anybody on your team that was one of those people that you really had to sit them down and go, you need to take a break?
Oh yeah, and sometimes it was me. You know, and yeah, I would catch myself if I realized I was eating lunch at my desk regularly, that even if I just walked to the break room to get away from my desk, because if I'm sitting at my desk, I'm gonna look at my computer. It's just gonna happen.
Yeah.
I'm gonna answer an email. It's just gonna happen. And so oh yeah, absolutely. You know, and so yeah, absolutely, got to make people get up and do that stuff. And to something that Linda Ann said earlier, you know, like when I'm writing or something, and a lot of times, you know, us non-professional writers don't have editors, so I get up and I go away. And then I come back and I look at it with fresh eyes, and all of a sudden that word I've been staring at that is wrong jumps out at me. And I'm able to make those corrections because I unhooked from it and then I came back to it. Also, if I'm really struggling with like an ending or a problem, whatever, walking away, getting my mind on something else often helps me to come back and to find that answer.
As somebody who does occasionally write professionally, I do the exact same thing. When I get a block, I go for a walk. It's like Linda Ann says, getting out in nature, I reconnect, and all of a sudden inspiration is back. Dr. Martha, let's go to you.
He brought up a really good point here about those companies that present the kinds of benefits that would encourage people to step away from their workstation and move around and do whatever they need to do to take that break. But then culturally, it's not encouraged or maybe even frowned upon. You know, that at the end of the day, it's up to every individual to either fight for their right to take a break or not. And I understand that depending on the organization and the culture, that fight might go differently for different people. But in the end, it's your health, it's your well-being. And my big thing is you really need to get away from your workstation, especially for white collar workers. You sit all day at work, you sit on your way to and from work because you're either driving or taking a train or a bus or whatever. You get home, you do what you need to do. And what do? You sit to relax. So we do a lot of sitting, and a lot of it we do in some kind of a box, whether it's your office, whether it's your cubicle, whether it's your car, whether it's your house. So go outside, get away from your workstation, go outside and get away from the screens. Give your eyes a chance to rest. And I don't mean trade in your computer screen for your telephone screen. Get away from that. And when Linda Ann was talking about forest bathing, which I think is wonderful, I can picture so many people going to the forest with headphones. They don't hear a thing that's going on, right? But they're out in nature, so they think. So it's so important for every person to take on that responsibility for themselves, because if you don't, nobody else will. There are some companies out there who are very proactive in promoting actual breaks. Whether they announce it on the PA or whatever they do, whether it's pre-scheduled at this time, everybody get up and stretch or do whatever. But for the most part, it really is up to each individual. And something else that Lee brought up that I've always found fascinating is the smokers versus non-smokers. You don't see a smoker miss a break, right? Because they answer to a master. And those who don't have that addiction sit there and work. And what's even worse is that sometimes where smokers, it's assumed they're going to be out taking a break, sometimes the non-smokers get the stink eye for doing the same, for taking a break, because they're not holding a cigarette. So I've seen that over the years, and I've always puzzled me what's going on there. But the bottom line is every one of us has the responsibility to make sure we take those breaks throughout the day. And if you don't fight for yourself and your own health and well-being, nobody else will.
Yeah, you've got to you've got to make your own decisions, because ultimately you're going to be responsible for whatever happens. Brendan, let's go to you.
So because I've worked in consulting for the last couple of years, I've been to a lot of different office locations, and obviously I can compare and contrast what certain companies do versus some other ones. So I'm sure a lot of people are familiar here with the office and what the break room, like this is the best way, the break room in the office. You can see it. That's not what you should be doing anymore. Especially if you're trying to attract people to come back into the office and not work remotely. If you want them to come to the office, give them an environment that they want to come to. So just some of the cooler things that I've seen some companies do is I've seen an indoor courtyard as well as an outdoor courtyard. So it's basically like an outdoor courtyard, but it's all inside. That would have been a large kind of lunchroom, but instead they put down fake grass and different designs and lighting. And that was one of the coolest things I've ever seen. And employees loved that because it was an incentive of like, all right, let me get up from my desk and let me go sit in like the chaise lounge. So things like that, as well as like little games that they had, whether it be foosball or they had like an arcade game. Again, those things can backfire as well, but if it's managed appropriately, it can be done well. As well as once a week, I've seen companies do an exercise hour where they would have a professional personal trainer come in, lead a class for the week. And sometimes even if you like participate in that, they wouldn't count it as time against your break. It was time built in that you would get paid for. But I do want to come back to some of these articles just for some reference on some things. So I did have an article here about what's called a booster break program, which is a group session devoted exclusively to standard 15-minute work breaks regarding get physical activity. And the results of this, after a 6-month period, they did 117 sessions, average monthly attendance ranging from 76 to 86%. And this is what I think is really important here. As somebody, I work out a lot. So participants significantly improved their HDL cholesterol and lost an average of 14 pounds. So talking about promoting employee health, that's 15 minutes, 117 sessions, six months, and you had an average weight loss of 14 pounds. Yeah, I think that's probably something that more companies should consider.
I'm now on the break diet. Let me ask you though, because we're kind of focusing on those people who are, co-located in the office, but especially when people transitioned, over the pandemic into working remotely, the first thing that everyone did was, work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. How do you regulate yourself, especially you who's kind of got a foot in both worlds? When you're working in your home office, how do you ensure that you're still taking breaks?
That's a great question. And it's as simple as my office is downstairs, the kitchen is upstairs, And I learned this technique from my boss because she said she didn't like working from home, and then she started working a job at a certain point that was I drove to Dunkin' Donuts or Starbucks. I went and got my coffee. Then I drove back to the house, and then I started going. So just to get yourself into that sort of mode. So, I mean, you could do the same thing when it's time, like, all right, I need a break. Maybe I'll go check the mailbox. I'll throw some laundry, and it's making sure that it's built into within that. And it's not also going to completely distract you from what you want to accomplish.
Yeah, there are a few coffee shop owners in town who I'm on a first name basis with. Linda Ann, let's go to you.
Yeah, I want to emphasize some of the things that, Brendan was saying, as with the forest bathing, just going out in nature and so forth. They found that, and I was reading some NIH studies about it as well, and how its effect on the cardiovascular system. It stimulates the immune system, reduces cortisol, slows the heart rate, lowers blood pressure, all those kinds of things. But I'm glad the conversation went in this direction about personal responsibility, because when I was in a in-person corporate kind of job, one of the things, because my background, I had done sold occupational health, things like that. I always made sure all the team members had a proper chair, had a proper desk height, when they did have those standing desks, the mobile ones that would go up and down, you have to be really careful about the distance between the monitor and the desk where you have your keyboard has to be independently moving, because otherwise your hands are in the wrong position, those kinds of things. And so you're looking at cumulative trauma for yourself. If you're not having your arms and hands in the right position, you could increase your risk for carpal tunnel. There's things where damage to your discs in your neck if you're not properly sitting up. So people, and I looked at it as from an organizational point of view, it's an investment in not having cumulative trauma as a workers' comp claim, right? But when you're at home, you also need to think about, how are you sitting at your desk? How are you doing those things? Because, I know that I lean on like this. I can feel it in my arm at the end of the day, so you have to pay attention and give your body will tell you when you need breaks. But my point on this is that as an individual, you have to care for yourself, because nobody's walking around your office.
Yeah, no one's going to look after you. When you leave home, you have to start looking after yourself. Dr. Jeremy, let's go to you.
I want to reflect on a couple of things that were mentioned and then share something that I do that I have found very effective. What Linda Ann and Lee were talking about this getting outside and either 20 minutes a couple times a day or every single day. There's a book called The 3-Day Effect, where they'll take, and lead to your point, I think the program was more towards veterans that have PTSD, and the dramatic change that it would have just by taking them out to like the Tetons or the Grand Canyon, just being completely outside for 3 days, and such a mental reset. So there's value in that. There's other things that people can do, even if they're not working. I mean, home camping trips, get a hammock, sleep outside, these kinds of things. So there's things that you can do that aren't necessarily that might not happen during work, but they can still give you that type of refreshing period. And then the thing, Lee, you were talking about, you walk away, you come back, boom, that was the word. It's called an incubation period. Tom, I know we've spoke about this a couple of times, but it can be as quick as 8 seconds that it takes. So whenever you can switch off completely from the task that you're on, it's that simple thing, right? You can't remember a word or somebody's name, and then all of a sudden, just give me 10 minutes, I'll think of it. But it can happen the same way with very intense, very big challenges, problem solving. Sometimes it might take 2 nights of sleeping on it. You wake up in the morning with an idea, but sometimes that very simple incubation period can be very effective. And then one of the concerns, and one of the things that I hear from a lot of the people that I coach, is that you have this momentum that goes back and forth, and I can't, I can't take a break and I can't take a vacation because then I'll lose this momentum. And once I'm going hard on a project, if I lose my momentum, that's it. But then on the back end, it's work-life balance isn't good. I'm getting burnt out. So it's interesting when I ask the question of what about the momentum for, your plans for your own life or the way you feel on a day-to-day basis? How many years need to go by before you look back and realize, man, for the past 7 years, I was just burnt out? And is that the kind of thing you want to look back on at 7 years? And the key is, again, it's breaking your vision of what tomorrow can be. And it's like, how can we make your tomorrows better than today? And part of it is just visioning out. What would happen if I didn't, what would happen if I had more energy throughout the day? What would happen if I did even just try to take a 15-minute break? Or it's something that works. It's weird to joke about it, but with the remote world, what you can do when you're working at an office or when you're remote is you can go outside and take a walk, because everyone can go outside the door and that can be very effective. I mean, I used to, I'm a self-proclaimed hypocrite in some reasons because I will still not do that when I need to, right? We all have our things that we don't do, but I do it from time to time. And I remember when I did it religiously, I mean, just 3 minutes, it makes a big difference. So I also wanted to, Tom, can I take another 3 to 5 minutes? I want to share something.
Oh, if people start to nod off, I'll stop you, but go ahead.
All right, thanks. Well, you would have stopped me by now, Tom. So I want to show you this. This is interesting. And I'm just going to run down a list for people here and for people on the podcast, because I found this a little bit interesting. There was this article on Take a Break Intervention where you're improving oncology nurse wellness. I won't get into the specifics, but there are some interesting activities that were done. Adult coloring, mini puzzles, nostalgia games like Kerplunk, Old Maid, Connect Four. There was a spring theme, which is writing uplifting notes to colleague where they were decorating them with plastic eggs and such, creating pinwheels, aromatherapy, outdoor games, Halloween coloring, creating pine cone bird feeders, cookie decorating, cutting out snowflakes, nature scavenger hunt. So part of it is getting creative. And I want to go back to I think, Lee, you were talking about this Brendan, you were sharing that research about, all the weight that was lost when you had these booster times. Something I do once pandemic hit, gyms were closed. We had to figure out how to do things. I ended up, and I've been doing this for, I guess 3 years now. I just created an outdoor gym. I got scrap metal, industrial parts from industrial steel parts, ropes, parts from old abandoned railroad tracks. And all times of the year, my favorite time, well, not 14 degrees, but you're looking at 10 degrees, 14 degrees in the winter, and then 90, 95 in the summer. I work out in all kinds of weather. The hot or cold doesn't bother me. It's the wind. That's what does bother me. But you talk about these increments. There are times when I know I'm addicted to it. So I got to get it in. I might have 15 minutes and then I have to jump onto a meeting and then I'll jump back for 15 minutes. And then I might have a meeting, but then I'll jump back and finish off for a half hour. And that's an hour workout. But talk about breaking up your day, getting that blood flowing, getting that oxygen going, and putting on, I love my music, putting on my workout playlist. And how powerful is that to bring energy to any kind of a meeting and to creativity and just letting that thought go. And it's not a total loss. When I was writing some of these corporate training programs, I remember going to the gym and I would just have a notebook with me and I would write down my ideas. I structured an entire 9 to 12 week program at the gym. So it's not lost time, but when are we most productive? And bottom line, just try something for 15 minutes. Really, what do you have to lose? Tom?
That list is also great for your next kid's birthday party. But
That's right.
But I want to ask you this because, we can totally agree on all of this. But I know that there's going to be an IO out there or an HR person out there who goes to a team leader and says, I've taken a look at your team. You guys need to take a break. You're going to take your team camping for the next 3 days. And their response is going to be, no, I'm not. How can we stop now? We're in the middle of something. Like, there's going to be 1,001 excuses. So how do we convince those sticks in the road that you've got to take your own breaks and you've got to let your teams take breaks?
In terms of breaks, yes. For the something like a 3-day thing, those are of course harder for companies, and that's where you're looking at these retreats, which isn't a bad idea. Something like that is easy to coordinate. I think there's different ways to measure it. And if you're bringing something like that to the workplace, do a little research on the back end. Like, what kind of data can you know that you'll collect, which is really, what's reaction and planned action. So what are people's reactions going to be that are going to be involved in this? And what's the kind of planned action? You can also measure, you can measure things like learning. What do people learn from it? And you can measure habits. So you can think about all these different kinds of things, impact that aren't, because we always talk about return on investment, but there's other things that you can measure that can make a difference. So it's about understanding what that can be. And then, of course, it's about getting buy-in. Very hard, almost impossible to really convince anyone about anything. So it's about getting that buy-in. And it's not the easiest thing, but if you can show that something even is look at frontline workers, right? Something as small as 15 minutes off the floor once a week. I'm willing to bet that an IO can go to any organization, put together something that takes 15 minutes a week, can run some analysis, and can probably show if it's effective, if it's based on this and that, what you're measuring, what the desired impact is, the desired result. I'm willing to bet that something as little as 15 minutes a day in terms of our topic is work break, so we'll just call it a work break, could be beneficial. And then that way you have something to help with the decision making from up above in terms of whether or not this is something we can take as an investment instead of a cost.
Ultimately, the proof is in the increased productivity. Everyone seems to buy that. Dr. Martha, let's go to you.
Well, Tom, first of all, you can't make me go camping. It's a lost battle. Give it up. I go home at the end of the night. I say goodbye to the forest. But, I'm listening to all these wonderful statistics and studies being referenced, and I love it. And you have to remember that we are trained researchers and scientists here in this group, and we love this kind of stuff. But realistically, how many employees are checking out these articles to look at the data that supports the benefits of taking breaks, the health benefits, the weight loss, the cardiovascular, the mental clarity, the productivity? At the same time, how many in the management team are doing that? So I think there has to be, as big as I am on responsibility for the self, there has to be some kind of an education that is provided for both the employee and the employer so that everybody understands what the concrete benefits are. Because if an employee really doesn't understand the benefits and you present this idea, they may have 1,000,001 excuses or 1,000,001 reasons to dismiss it. An employer may say, look, you're not going to cost me any more money by telling my people not to work and get paid. So there's a certain lack of understanding of the concreteness of the benefits that are associated with this. Not only the good things, but also the bad things that can happen if we don't take care of ourselves. I remember working for a company where a new manager came on board, and she was kind of harping on this one guy for not getting through all his emails. And he said, there's just not enough time in the day. I don't take any breaks other than my lunch break. And her solution was, well, you can eat at your desk and check your emails. So she obviously had no idea what she's even saying and what the effects of something like that really are, much less encourage people to take care of themselves. So education is so important. And I think sometimes we take it for granted because we tend to gravitate to this kind of thing. We love research and concrete things and studies that we can read and reference. But if that's the only place that knowledge stays, maybe the audience just isn't understanding the importance of what is so obvious to us.
I've lost my screen, but I think Jeannie, you're up next.
So I just wanted to bring, like what Linda Ann was saying about how you have to advocate for yourself. I'm bringing into, maybe a little bit discussion towards disability, to where a person with, let's say, autism doesn't really communicate their needs, or they don't speak up, or when they do, they don't do it in just the most accurate way. So leaders need to know their audiences. They need to know their employees and what they consider to be an appropriate break. In one instance, my 16-year-old daughter asked for even just a 15-minute break, and her supervisor basically said, no, you don't get a break. You're only here for 6 hours. But Utah state law states if you're a minor, you get, after the first 5 hours, you are entitled to a 15-minute break. And with her autism, she knew the law, she knew the rules. And so she was able to, she talked to her employer, probably not in the best way, and advocated for herself. And as a result, pretty much worked her way out of the job. But how does an employee with a disability advocate for themselves and not lose their job?
Yeah, it's those challenges are there, and it's not just for people who may be dealing with disabilities. There are people who have leaders and bosses and managers who, I work 24/7. Why can't you be working 24/7? Well, that philosophy is just killing us both. So, Linda Ann, let me go to you, and like, how do you deal with some of these issues that Jeannie's talking about?
Well, first, there's protected populations. So she's a protected population. And so I don't know where she would access what organization it was, that whether or not they had human resources in it, but she's a protected population, and maybe she could. I know at 16 there isn't anybody who communicates things as well as maybe they could be, right? So there's different avenues, but that's part of the job of a human resources person, is to make sure that those kinds of things take place in an appropriate and non-retaliatory way, right? Because what it looks like, or what it sounds like, is that there was retaliation against her requesting her legal rights, and that's illegal. So,
yeah. Did you have another point you wanted to make?
I did. Well, there's a couple of things. One thing that people have done, and I think is helpful for a couple of reasons, is walking meetings. If you're in a place where you're on site with the organization, go for a walking meeting, and not only does that give you the exercise and the break and those kinds of things, but it changes the dynamic of the meeting. And so people who normally wouldn't speak up, may tend to speak up in different situations and things like that. So that's one thing. 30 years ago, I used to keep a coloring book and crayons in my desk drawer. And when I could see people were stressed or whatever, I'd come over and say, color. But it changes, not only does it make it laugh because it seemed ridiculous. Now there's science to back it up, but they would do it. And then they would start talking to somebody, and it would give that their breathing would change, all those kinds of things. And that's the point, right? And to support what Jeremy was saying, sometimes you just go out, whatever it is, if it's for 10 or 15 minutes for exercise, something's always better than nothing. And you won't beat yourself up on completely not doing it. So just because you don't have that 40 minutes or 45 minutes to an hour to go to the gym to work out, just do something. And there's a benefit to it. It doesn't matter how long it is. I remember when I used to work in the DC area, it was a badge of honor to see how many hours a day you could work, right? And it doesn't mean you were more productive. It just meant you sat at your desk longer. And I am not a person who can really do that. I'd rather start running the door at 9, go gangbusters till 5, and then go live the rest of my life. I didn't live to work. I worked to live the rest of my life. Right. And so just, set some parameters for yourself, even when you set time, a timer on your phone and say, okay, I'm going to work and not answer any texts or anything for 30 minutes, put your phone over there. And then you've given yourself 30 minutes of concentration. Then the alarm goes off, you get up to go get it and go get a drink of water.
It's really interesting, as some of the stuff you're talking about, I'm of the philosophy, if you're managing a team, to say things to them like, if we work till 4 o'clock, but at 3 or 3:30, you're done for the day. Don't just sit at your desk for the next 45 minutes, get out of there. But there's always this pushback of, well, if I do that, everyone's going to be leaving at 3 o'clock, not 4 o'clock. But the truth is that doesn't happen, does it?
No, and then the other thing, it's a give and take, right? There are times we're going to be on deadline or whatever, and I need you to stay till 6 or 7. And
Yeah.
It's
like Jeremy says, we should really talk to our employees more. Laura, let's go to you.
Well, that was essentially going to be my point, Tom, actually.
Expand on it.
Piggybacking on what Martha was talking about with the education side is you can have organic work breaks where the employees make the choice. And I think the idea of, like Lynn Ann and multiple others have said, the employees need to take ownership on their time, and then educating employees so they know and understand and are encouraged. But also, if you're going to have a corporate sponsored break time, a corporate time activity, Lee mentioned the company near his house that has the beautiful walking path that no one ever uses. What's the point of having the foos table, the arcade game, and the walking path if that's not what your employees want and that's not what they're going to go for? And if they're not interested in doing those things, then don't promote them and don't offer them and don't have them. So the communication and the two-way street, talking to your employees about what kind of things are they interested in and what do they want and need. And I'm doing some work with my spouse's squadron and as a volunteer thing. And I was talking about running a survey and he was like, I don't think you're going to get a whole lot of response, to be honest. And I said, well, you know what? At least I've done the survey. And if no one responds, then I'm just going to make choices, but I gave them the opportunity to give me the feedback. There's only so much I can do to pull information out of people. But as I do activities and events, then I ask the questions face to face with the 2 or 3 people who come to that, then the 2 or 3 people that come to that. And you just kind of make things work to get the information. But it's not, I can't plan something without taking into account what are other people's schedules and what are other people's times and what are their interests.
You kind of hit,
sorry, I'm rambling now.
That's right. You kind of hit on something that I've been noticing, and I haven't seen enough of it yet to go, I think this is a trend, but it does seem that organizations, especially the ones that are more progressive, are becoming the social committee. They're the events planners. Organizations that are leading seem to be taking a much bigger role in trying to have their employees active as a community, trying to build the community, not only from 9 to 5, but outside as well. So do you think that progressive organizations are going to become much more social conveners and really looking at the overall mental health of their employees?
I think that it's a stronger trend with the remote companies. What I've seen in a lot of the remote companies is they're the ones coordinating the work breaks because you don't have that office environment of people getting up and walking down the hall, having their their walking meetings and things like that. You can't do that remotely as well without
Yep.
coordination, right? And so I have friends who work for fully remote companies, and they're showing pictures on LinkedIn of doing a murder mystery dinner theater virtually with their coworkers after hours, and things like that. So I feel like there's a more concerted effort needs to be done, and it works better in the remote because you don't have those natural, organic, face-to-face conversations.
Well, I hope it goes everywhere. Dr. Martha, let's go to you.
I think it's important to point out the obvious that we are somehow believing that taking a break is a waste of time, which is why I think so many people don't take breaks like they should. And I'm listening to the conversation here. Here we are talking about the benefits of breaks, promoting breaks. And you know what else I'm hearing peppered within the conversation is the idea that breaks are a waste of time. Let me tell you why I say that. When Dr. Jeremy was talking about having developed his program while at the gym, one of the things he said, so my time at the gym was not a waste of time. Hello, red flag went up for me right away. Would your time at the gym otherwise be a waste of time to you? To me, of course not. That's my time at the gym. Don't mess with my gym time, by the way.
Maybe I was
That's
at the gym
my
during
time.
Work hours.
Don't call me.
I
Don't
was
bother
supposed to
me.
be working,
I don't care if you're
Martha.
on
I
fire.
admit, I was on the clock.
I don't care if you're on fire. Don't call me. The second thing is, in my opinion, and I'm pretty sure in other people's opinions, a walking meeting is not a break. It's a meeting where you happen to be walking. So see how even here in this conversation, we're riddled with guilt about taking breaks. Let's do a little self-check.
Yeah, that could be really beneficial. Although now I want to see Jeremy and Dr. Martha compete on Jeremy's Spartan athletic course. And Lee, maybe we'll throw you in there as well. Lee, let's go to you.
First, I say to Martha, bravo. You know, that is one of the struggles, even amongst ourselves as professionals, to understand that a break is okay and necessary and should be a break. Because I think we've all probably done that. But anyway, what I was going to say is going back to something you said, Tom. I did that quite frequently. If you guys are done, you know, at 3 o'clock, you can do nothing anywhere. Why are you doing it here? But the caveat to that is we always had a conversation. You know, I'll give you as much time off as I can give you. However, you will work till the work is done. If you're done at 3, fantastic. If you're done at 6, sorry for your luck. You know, and that was always the thing. And it's, you know, and if that's not acceptable, we'll be here till 4:30 every day. And funny how no one took what was behind door number 2. You know, but then the trap there also is you have to make sure that they're not working through all their breaks and their lunch in order to leave early. You know, so I would always, you know, have to go by and go, hey, look, I need you to get up and get away from your desk. Oh, well, I got to get this finished so I can leave. Well, maybe you're going to leave a little bit later, but you need to get up.
Right.
You know, because I need to worry. I you know, especially in that role, I'm responsible for your fitness, your health, a lot more than in a civilian organization you are. I mean, I am responsible for that because if you go out for your PT test and you fail, they're going to look at me, not just you.
Right.
So a little motivation for me there, but get off your butt. If you work a little later, great, but leave when you're done.
I'd like to get more into this conversation, Lee, but we've got about 5 minutes left. 4 minutes now. So Linda Ann, I'm going to go to you. Jeannie will go to you after Linda Ann. And then Jeremy, I think we're going to bring it back to you.
I'm going to piggyback on kind of what Lee was saying to some extent. I think that sometimes as workers and as leaders, we need to be aware of how realistic the deadlines are that are being set. And I've seen it happen on a number of occasions where the client says, makes changes that add work, but the deadline doesn't change. And so I think that as employees, we need to be sure that we're communicating to leaders, and the leaders need to listen as to, is this a realistic deadline, and let the clients know you can make changes, but the deadline has to push, and things like that. So it's I think that we need to pay more attention to what the expectations are that are being put out there. And something else, that just little things that even if you're remote, you can do, is, like there's National Chocolate Chip, sun one way, National Chocolate Chip Cookie Day or whatever, and everybody can sit down and have milk and cookies at 2:00 or whatever it is, and just things like that. There's National Coffee Day. You can have, pet come to work and everybody's sitting there with their pet, whatever it is, just to lighten the mood and create a little bit of a mental break. And then I'm going to go ahead and let Martha know that I am with you on the camping. I'll go hiking and chop wood and cook over a campfire, but shower and a bed.
Jeremy, new plans for the CBOC convention. We need 2 locations. Or Jeremy, taking breaks, we could play some Mind Trap. And I see there's one tomorrow.
Yes, nice transition. So I was just looking at our events. Hey, cboc.com/events. So we're October 13th, and we have 9 events left in the month. We have all access public events, and we also have member only events. So I will mention some of the member only events that are coming up. Mind Trap tomorrow at 12:00, the one, the only. Brendan Gretsch is running that. That's for a half hour at 12 p.m. Eastern time. If you're a member, check your portal for the link, or check your email. That'll likely be sent out a couple hours beforehand. We also have a public IO joint networking event tomorrow, which is with Dr. Destiny Preetz, IO military experts, and CBOC. That's at 6:30 p.m. on the 18th. On the 18th. Next week, that's today. Best work break ideas. Next week is energizing your workplace, sprinkling in excitement. That'll be our event next week. I do need to mention, we have a special 90-minute workshop on October 20th, creating workplace initiatives, how to bring IO into any workplace. And also, speaking of work breaks, we also have bi-weekly momentum sessions for members. They're half hour long, every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Nice work break there. And we're also doing a fun members only event every month. This month, it happens to be on October 31st at 12 p.m. It is a virtual online escape room. So some different kinds of work break ideas. We just have to figure out how to get the exercise part of that going in somehow. Tom?
Few more events, and it'll be CBOC TV. Well, that does wrap up our time for this week. Thank you everyone very much for being here today. Great comments once again from Lee and Laura and Jeannie, Linda and Dr. Martha, and anyone else I forgot, including that guy, Dr. Jeremy Lukaba. Great hanging out with you guys once a week. I look forward to it every single week, and we hope that it's beneficial for everybody. And with that, Jeremy, I think we should wrap it up.
Counting out in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1.